Hi guys, it's Miss Ginger. I am so happy to see everybody. Actually, not really seeing you. Kind of different when you do virtual teaching, but I'm really glad to be here. I hope that everybody had a great spring break. I know I did. Spent some time out in the great outdoors with my granddaughters. Spent some quality time with my parents and my sons. What more could you ask for? Oh, and of course, did a lot of studying for environmental science. So with that being said, in all the new virtual teaching, I just want to make sure that you look down through today's assignments. The first assignment, obviously, you're watching it right now. After we get done talking, or I get done talking about the PowerPoint presentation, we're going to drop down, we're going to drop down and watch a video on biodomes. And then after that, you're going to answer a question about two things you thought was really cool about the biodomes. And then after that, you drop down and it'll be your vocab assignment for the week, and it'll be due on Wednesday. So without further ado, I'd like to just go ahead and jump into the PowerPoint presentation. Please don't worry if you didn't download it or you haven't viewed it yet. You can view it whenever I'm done, before you start the video, or print it. I wouldn't even suggest printing it because it's just wasted ink at this point. There are a couple things that you can go back and reference to if you'd like, but again, a lot of what's in it, mostly the first 6 pages, there's 3 pages of pictures and then 3 pages of a couple of vocab words that I'm going to go over with you. You'll see most of that in the video link below of biodomes. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started, and I want to talk to you about biodomes, something that I learned a lot about in this past week. A biodome is a human-made, self-contained environment. And when I say human-made, it's something that we as humans made, and it's self-contained, so it's got to be self-containing. We've got to be able to provide for ourselves. Like it does have exit doors, just saying, but we have to pretend like we don't have those exit doors once we go in, and we have to sustain ourselves. That's what I was looking for, the word sustain. We have to sustain ourselves through growing our own food, to be able to live off of, and then working around the different ecosystems that are brought in. And that's what the biosphere, the one in the United Kingdom, in England, Cornwall, England, and the other one in Arizona, that is now owned by Arizona State University, is called Biosphere 2. But the first biosphere that we're going to talk about is the Eden Project. It actually opened in the year of 2000, and to date there's been hundreds of thousands of people visit every year to see how our scientists and engineers have worked together to bring all of our ecosystems together and how they maintain each other, which is really, really awesome. So within a biosphere, we have, we have our rainforests, we have ocean, we have waterfalls, we have grasslands, we have desert-like conditions, and within all those different ecosystems, we have hundreds of thousands of plants, over 5,000 different species of plants, and we have a few animals. So they're all within these different greenhouses, because obviously some plants won't do so good in England's environment. Some do, some don't. So separate greenhouses. So you have a temperate greenhouse that would house maybe plants from Australia, Africa, South Africa, and from California, whereas your other greenhouse would be more for cold climate type plants. So that's where we go with our biodome or biosphere. The Eden Project was really cool. It was never open for us to live in, but just for like a classroom, a really, really, really large classroom. And when you see it on the video and you see it on the front page of your PowerPoint, the first thing that came to my mind was beehive, beehive. But since I live on Lake Tarpon, it looks to me like frog eggs. Sorry, but it does. And one of the really cool things I learned about the design of the Eden Project was the um, beehive-like windows. They're actually a plastic and they have gases in between them. They don't filter out the ultraviolet rays. They let sunlight come through and the ultraviolet rays because we need those to help our plants grow. So I thought that was kind of cool. And there's another video out there about the Eden Project. It's really more in depth about every design. There's like a solar panel system that looks like a sunflower. I mean, there's just so much. So if you get time, I couldn't play it because it's like 20-minute long video, but if you get time, look it up. It's really fantastic. So going on from the Eden Project, we're going to go over to our Biosphere 2. Biosphere 2. That's 2. Okay. Well, where's Biosphere 1? Why would they just skip over 1? Oh, because we live on Biosphere 1. The planet Earth is Biosphere 1. So we, mankind, scientists and engineers, decided to build, it started in 1987, build Biosphere 2 to replicate Biosphere 1. And in the process, they created waterfalls, they created the rainforest, they created an ocean with a real coral reef in it. It has oysters and crabs in it. Pretty amazing. What else do they have? The grasslands, and they have their agricultural farms because they decided, and that would be the builders of the biosphere in Arizona, they were going to put 8 biospherians inside. That's 8 adults, 4 women and 4 men. And they were going to live in it for 2 years. So in 1991, the doors opened to Biosphere 2 in Arizona, and all 8 people went in and the doors were shut. And it was on them to sustain themselves nutritionally through what they harvested. They grew and they harvested. And they had to learn how to maintain all the different ecosystems within the biosphere. So, yeah, it sounded great. It really did, and it really is. It's a really cool thing. But it wasn't long after they got settled in and the harvests were being harvested, the fields were being harvested, things just started to go downhill. There was plants that were dying off, there were trees that were dying, their food sources were starting to deplete, there was an imbalance somewhere. It became so severe that most of the people that were in there was only 8 of them, lost an excessive amount of weight, some of them up to 50 pounds. Definitely a problem there. So they were having a hard time living in their man-made environment with all the resources, plants and species in the world. They were having a really hard time. But they muddled through it as best they could, and they learned a lot while they were trying to figure out a solution to the problem of being nourished. So that seemed to be, it was going to happen. You know, there's always going to be bumps when you're working in projects. They brainstormed a lot, which I like that word brainstorming. That's really cool, because no matter what their degree was, they all had to figure out how to survive in their environment. So things started going a little bit crazier, and they noticed that they were waking up like in the middle of the night gasping for air. It's like, what's going on? Well, they looked at their gauges. They have an underground element to the biosphere that controls a lot of different things that we don't see. Like if we're visiting the biosphere, they started noticing that their carbon dioxide levels were off the charts, and they had 7 tons of oxygen missing. Okay, so we're talking about 3.5 acres, 3.5 acres and thousands of square feet of man-made self-contained environment, And we think, because we know that trees produce a lot of oxygen, well, why are we depleting of it? What's going on? So they had to sit down and they had to just, start researching what's going on. What is taking all of our oxygen away from us? And like one of the young ladies said in the video that I watched, the news media was just like hot on. They were like giving them a bad rap. Oh, this is such a farce. This is whatever. This is just a money waster. They're not learning anything. Now we're going to have to pipe in oxygen to them. So that really kind of made the whole project seem like it was a waste of time, because towards the end they had to bring in oxygen. They had to pipe in oxygen so they could stay, the 8 biospherians could stay alive. So everyone said it's a failure, but scientifically and engineer-wise, there was many successes. They did find out what was going on with their oxygen, and what happened was the soil that they brought in from outside when this was being built was carbon infused, or carbon, it had carbon in it, and when it turned itself into compost, it emitted CO2 in massive levels. And the concrete that they used, and concrete's very porous, concrete they used for around the aquariums that were inside of the biosphere was eating it up, was eating up the carbon dioxide. It was sucking up. The carbon dioxide was coming out, and it was just chomping away at the oxygen, and the oxygen just was gone, and it was being stored in the rocks. I believe that's true. That's like really crazy. 7 tons of oxygen. Talk about being frantic. When they found out their source, they were able to get the oxygen they needed from outside, but it made the whole Biosphere 2 project look like a failure, when in fact, to this day, no one's living in the biosphere, but all the vegetation, all the plant life that's there, whether it be the desert, the ocean, the waterfall, the tropical rainforest, they're all still intact and thriving, which is pretty amazing. The University of Arizona, a lot of their students come there to learn a lot about how our ecosystems can live together, how our biomes can live together, what biomes can live where they can't. It's a pretty amazing experiment that had a couple bumps, but overall the last 20 something years, it's still thriving. It's still school for people to come and try different things. One thing I researched online or found online is that there are some engineers that are coming in to the biosphere in Arizona, and they are going to create a drought in the tropical rainforest. And they're going to research it, experiment with it, and see what happens, and see how the rainforest reacts to little or no water at all. That should be interesting to see and to read about. So keep that in mind. Go ahead. I'm going to finish up here. Tomorrow we'll go through slide 7. Let me go through 5 and 6 with you right quick, and let me grab those for you. So on page 4 of your PowerPoint packet, it says, what is a biodome? Well, I've told you that like 50 million times. It is a man-made, self-contained environment that supports plants and animals. The next page is going to be page 5, and it is who builds and runs a biodome. That's scientists and engineers. They build and run a biodome. And the last one is what organisms help fertilize the process of growing food in a biodome, and that is going to be like mushrooms and earthworms. And that's something that I didn't talk about. One thing I noticed on all the videos was there wasn't any like gazelles running across, the desert, or a dog running through the fields, or cats, or rabbits, or lions. I didn't see any of that. So I'm like, so why aren't there any animals there? So a little bit more research on my part, and it was because if they brought in large breed animals like a lion, a tiger, a dog, a cat, a cow, a horse, zebras, giraffes, hippos, the biospherians would have to not only sustain their life nutritionally, they would have to do that for those animals as well, and they were not equipped to do that. So they chose, believe it or not, the number one animal was a hummingbird. They chose to bring hummingbirds in. They chose to bring in pollinators, which makes a lot of sense. That would be your bees, to pollinate their plants so they can continue to grow their food and for other plants within the biosphere. Butterflies, flies, I have to swallow when I say this. They brought in snakes and they brought in turtles. I'm okay with the turtles, but the snakes, I'm just not sure I'd go visit right now because it's been 20 years since somebody's been there to live and like take care of them. And if mom and dad's watching, y'all know what I mean. Miss Ginger's not going down by no big snake. It's not happening. It just isn't. But those were the kind of animals and critters and bugs that they sit in there. The beetles, flies. They're just there, or we didn't see them. And it makes sense that they didn't take large breeds in there now that I've researched it and talked about it. So again, I'm just going to finish up because I'll just keep talking. So go ahead and do your video, answer the question down below, then do your vocab, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.